Hey, therapist, before we get going, I wanted to let you know that enrollment has opened for leaving the chair. So, leaving the chair is a small group experience for therapists who know they're done with one to one, or at least as much as they're doing. So, while I don't have any outcomes for therapists actually leaving or closing their practices, you might do that. You might make that decision in this group to do that. You might find other ways that are more sustainable to work. You might take a break. So we walk through all these different paths that you might take if you are done with as much one to one and you know that something needs to change. We start to make these shifts and they are specific to you, they are custom. And we do this in a small group experience where you can get feedback, you can get support of other peers that understand what you're going through. So if you're interested in learning more about leaving the chair, check the link in the show notes where I've linked the program. And enrollment closes at the time of this recording on January 30th. I hope to offer this group again in the fall, so check out my website if it's another time at drjenblanchett.com. Okay, thanks. And here's your program. Welcome to the Therapist Burnout Podcast, episode 100. Hey, therapist, welcome to the program. Today, I have a guest who is actually interviewing me, Micah Freeman, who's becoming a great friend as well. Hey, Micah, how are you?
Hey, Jen, I'm good. I'm super excited to be here.
Awesome. So I asked you to come on the show because we've been meeting in a group with a few other therapists, and we met in Annie Schussler's group. They have a group that has therapists who are building their program, although they are actually pivoting and doing something else in their offerings in the world. So I hope to actually have Annie back on the show because she came, I don't know, maybe sometime last year and talked on the program. So it'd be interesting to have them back and talk about what they're doing in the world. But we met in that group, and our group has really gelled and continued to meet throughout this year. And we've been building things openly online outside of private practice. So maybe give the good listeners just an introduction, a little bit about you.
Okay. I am in Portland, Oregon, and I've been here for 30 years plus. Actually, I moved here the moment I could move on my own somewhere, and I started teaching. I taught for 18 years, and then I segued into counseling, and I've been counseling for about 10. And yeah, I think that's enough of an intro for this moment.
That's great. Okay. Yeah. And typically I'd ask you your burnout story if you were my guest, but you're not my guest. You are the host today, technically. So I am going to reverse roles and let you ask me some questions today.
Yeah, so exciting. So because we're both Liz Gilbert fans, I wanted
Oh my
to
gosh.
start by asking you, do you have any cherished outcomes for this episode?
Such a good question already. See, this is why I wanted you to come on. I don't have any cherished outcomes really, other than having a great conversation for my listener. So I guess that's the one cherished outcome that I'd have. So I guess I do have a couple now that I'm thinking of it.
Right? It's almost impossible not to.
I know. Yeah. Well, I just think of the therapist who's listening to this and that writes into me a lot, that is struggling, that has been struggling for so very long. And so I hope that they'll feel seen and heard for whatever they're going through today. Those are the two things. A fun conversation, some levity as well, and also just to feel like they're seen and heard with what's going on with them.
Sounds like a good plan.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 100 episodes is a huge accomplishment.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering how it feels to be there, and if it feels the way that you thought it would feel. I mean, I imagine, a few years ago when you started this, you thought that it would feel a particular way to get to this particular milestone. And I'm wondering if those things match up.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it's always different than what we think, right? Like a
Mm-hmm.
huge goal that we've had. I think I liken it to when I graduated and received my doctoral degree. I thought this would be it, and I felt that. I felt part of that, but I think there was also part of me that was thinking of the next thing, like many of us do who have advanced degrees that have achieved a lot in our lives. Like many of the therapists listening to this podcast, you have advanced degrees, you've achieved a lot. And so part of it is like, yes, as a personal achievement, I wanted to have a 100 episode podcast. And I feel like I'm just like beginning in a way. And I feel like that parallel was similar when I got my doctoral degree. I'm like, wow, I achieved this thing. And I don't really feel like I know a lot still. And maybe that's some impostering. I don't know. And I feel like I've settled more into myself with getting to 100 episodes in a podcast because I really wanted, especially for this topic and this audience, to give it the breadth of time to feel like, you know what? I gave it my good college try, and 100 felt like doing that. And so getting to this point, I mean, I felt like I achieved the thing, I did the thing. And it was like, as I was approaching it, I was like, okay, what's next? And usually I'm pretty good at answering that question. And I was like, maybe I'm going to stop. I don't know where this is going. It's not like it makes me a lot of money. And so I think I was really like unsure when I was like podcasting in the 80s, my episode 80 or so like that. I was just like, I don't know where this is going. And then I feel like there was a turn that happened where I'm just like became more committed to this project and that it's bigger than me. And I think I can see that it is bigger than me. And I want more voices here to talk about what they're going through, more about burnout, more about how to get out of it. What's the next step for people? So that's a lot. I just talked a lot. So I'll let you kind of ask me a question or reflect on what you heard.
Yeah, I have a couple of different trailheads there. The first one is just the reality that always we always have a plan for what's next and an expectation about how that's going to make us feel like we've arrived somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And that is called the arrival fallacy, right? We don't ever get there. There's always the next idea in our heads. So with that human reality of always looking to the thing that's forward, I'm wondering how often you take the time to really reflect on what you have already done. I learned that idea from Oliver Berkman, the
Mm-hmm.
rather than the to-do list, the have done list. And so I just imagine that your have done list is giant, not only just for your life, but even on a weekly basis. I mean, I
It
have
is.
some sense of all of the things that you do in your life, and I can't wrap my mind around how you do it.
Yeah. Yeah, the have done list. Even like this year, it'll be 26 when this comes out. So in 26, yeah, I'll have reached 100 episodes. Yeah, I've done a lot of report writing because I work as a school psychologist. People actually interestingly have questions about that. They're always like, what's it like being a school psychologist? What do you even do? And I think because they're trying to figure out their pivot. And so they're interested in like this pivot I'm making. And then I'm like, I don't know if you necessarily want to do that because I don't even know if I want to do that like long term. Maybe not that for you, but I'm okay with that. I'm okay with like the school psych work. I actually like parts of it. I was just doing too much of it. So I definitely have done a lot of report writing. I have parented my children and they've gotten to their 10th and 12th year on life. And I think about them and like how much time I have left with them. And so like I've completed this like stage of motherhood and in this year. And it's a very active to have two very active boys, 10 and 12. And so that I'm putting on my like have done list, like a big one. That's huge. And I know that other things have to be smaller and I fight up against it all the time, right? Okay, just have done's. I didn't even count up the amount of podcasts that I did this year, but it was numerous. I didn't, podcast every week, but probably 3 weeks out of each month I did podcast and had many guests. Went on a cruise. That was fun. Had a really fun vacation with my boys this year. I really enjoyed it. There were also moments where I was like, "Can we get off the boat now? Like, please let me get off this boat." Because you're like kind of trapped on a boat with your family. And I like cruising, but I was like, this was the last one I do with them at this age. Like, maybe we'll go, my partner and I will go on another time. Yeah, have done. That's what comes to mind. That's what comes to mind, but we're thinking of something else usually at the end of the year, like or at the beginning of the year, like things I either that is a door slamming open on the outside exterior of my house and it's really windy. You probably can hear that in the recording, but I am distractible because there is like some kind of really epic windstorm happening in the state of Maine right now. So anyway, I'll let you speak after I'm distracted and have lights flickering and all the things happening.
Yeah, well, I mean, that just reminds me that because you have so much on your plate, and this is the Therapist Burnout podcast, where are you at with your own burnout? How are you managing what you're managing? And
Hmm.
is there any wisdom or advice that you would actually be giving yourself?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that sometimes I'm really hard on myself about that I feel like I should have figured this out by now, that I shouldn't be getting into spells where I feel like I'm burning out or that I'm overwhelmed or that I don't know what to do all the time. Going back to Liz Gilbert, like Earth School is very hard. And it's very,
Yes.
as a human, I do not do the best at scheduling and like predicting how long things will take. It is not a skill set that is very inherent in that I have. And I've learned how to do better. And I learned a lot of more like of things that I can't do and shouldn't do. And I think the start of this fall, I was, going to a couple contracts and I really looked at my schedule hard and I was like, this is what I think I can do. And, I'm giving myself margin. And, then I think I took a contract on that I didn't know like how, like what I was getting myself into and like the workload that it would entail. And previously, I think first, maybe out of my big ass burnout experience from 2020 to 2023, where I closed my practice, I would have, like, just been shitty to myself, just been a total asshole and been like, "What are you doing to yourself?" And I think I'm just being more gentle now that, like, "Okay, yeah, like, that happened, and we can try to do better. Like, the winter is looking better. You're gonna manage your schedule better. This is what we're gonna do to put in place for you. This is how we're gonna implement what you tell people all the time." Something we had talked about on a call, you and I, Micah, is just like sometimes it's hard for us to walk the walk and practice what we preach. Kind of like the metaphor of like the cobbler's, the cobbler's children's shoes, like they have like their shoes are a mess, right? And I think it's getting better. And yeah, sometimes I do feel that like I gonna figure it out? Like, is work ever gonna feel like truly sustainable? I don't know. I hope so.
Yeah. Well, and I think we teach what we most need to learn.
Mm.
That's the case for me. And so I think success is not necessarily not feeling burned out, but maybe feeling a little more resilient and a little more gentle with yourself about
Mhm.
your own expectations. And so if you've gone from having that inner critic that's telling you that you're messing up and you're doing it
Yeah.
wrong to having a lot more self-compassion and learning from all the experiments, I think that might be as good as it gets. I don't know if anybody, because as I was thinking about this podcast, I was like, well, what is burnout and who doesn't feel that in this day and age? And, what's our responsibility in the burnout and within the systems that we're in? Like yeah, I was just thinking about who doesn't feel burned out now.
Yeah, I think, that recent Moodle study at the top of the year came out and was saying, especially for Gen Z, burnout rates are anywhere from like 60 to 80%. So that would be like a big swath of that generation feels burnout right now. And I think for Xers and millennials, it's reduced, maybe like 40s, 50s, but it's still up there. Like boomers, I guess, have it figured out because they don't feel like a ton of burnout. And my hypothesis is like infusion of tech and what I call cognitive burnout. So we have the cognitive burnout and that screen fatigue and overload. I came from neuro rehab where I worked with folks post brain injury, and I'm like, Is everybody have brain injury now? Because that's what I feel like the symptoms people are telling me. They are just done, cognitively done, and some of the things that I used to help people with who had a legit brain injury, like needing to I mean, this is more dramatic for someone, like, really post-injury. They could work maybe, like, an hour or 2, and then, like, "I'm wiped, I'm done." But I see some of that, like, not to that degree, but, like, hey, in burnout, I see 1 to 2 clients, and I am toast. And I think that's unique to therapist burnout and the emotional exhaustion and compassion fatigue, vicarious trauma layers that are, inherent in our work. But there is a societal level that is occurring with burnout that it's having a moment for sure. And I think a lot of that is the influence of like constant media input and all the literal tabs that we are in on a day-to-day basis. So that's my little like burnout knowledge corner from 2025 that I feel like I can bring to the table for that.
I mean, I couldn't agree more. I think, I'm going to be 50 in 2026, and I feel so grateful that I was born early enough that I wasn't inundated with all of the stimulation that we contend with now. I mean, even 10 years ago, it felt like life was a little bit slower, and
Yeah.
the cognitive fatigue, the amount of information that we're just ingesting on a daily basis. I was learning about our foraging ancestors that were around for 200,000 years, and they had about 20 meaningful variables to keep track of. And I
Yeah,
think
like
now, right,
food,
what we've
water,
got,
relationship.
yeah.
I'm trying to think of all of yeah, it's like probably just very few. They didn't have to travel very far. Oh my gosh.
And I think we're trying to track 20 different things in every moment. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, of course we're burned out. This is not natural for our poor little nervous systems.
No, it's not. It's not, and I think adding, like, layers of, particularly, I think, for female identifying folks who tend to be this podcast, so 80% of this podcast listenership is female identifying, and so maybe that also we're adding layers of motherhood, we're adding layers of, perhaps hormonal changes that happen for women. For me, I went through menopause at 38, and that all coincided with me, like, launching a practice, being early in private practice, and then closing, and so I'd love to have, like, a menopause expert or a perinatal mental health as well, because I feel like I went through all those phases when there were so many changes for happening for me physically, and I hear that all the time from folks from this podcast who are in that phase of life, either in the hormonal changes associated in motherhood or in the menopausal years as well. So that's huge, I think, for me just to like put these connections as well with burnout for particularly that swath of female identifying folks who are in kind of those categories.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a trans man, and so I was socialized female and didn't transition until I was much older, 37. And so I think too about just all of the emotional labor that we are
Mm.
socialized to do. I mean, besides the hormonal aspects,
Mhm.
and how that's just the water that people socialized females swim in, and probably don't even realize the impact that that has, like, chronically. All that effort of attending to everybody's needs around you, even unconsciously.
Yeah. I mean, even if it's not explicitly stated,
Mhm.
it is like implicit, like, oh, yeah, you're the communication person in the family, or you know, monitor, like, everyone's food intake of your family, which is my one of my roles that I do. I'm like the chef in the home, and, like, my mental load of just food, like, what are we eating? That is one tab that I'm constantly, coming to all the time that I'm feeling like, am I just burnt out because I of life? Because I can't track all of these things. And so part of it is like the modern life, part of it I think it are layers of different identities that we hold and how they intersect with the role as a therapist or as a mental health professional. Yeah, so
Yeah,
much to consider.
so much. I listened to one of your past episodes and learned that you started studying burnout before you were even a therapist. Is that right?
Right. Yeah,
So
so
I'm curious about how, that happened.
yeah, so one of my first jobs, I worked in therapeutic foster care. So I was a foster care caseworker before I became a psychologist. And I almost left the field then. So that was, we'll see, when I was 23. So I was the guardian for a child in foster care and therapeutic foster care. So kids in therapeutic foster care have even higher acuity and difficulties, mental health diagnoses, behavioral difficulties than children who might be in regular foster care systems. So they have additional resources, parents go through more training, things of that nature. And I got to this point in that role because I could not leave it there. And there were times where I was just having to respond to so many needs of the kids that I was working with and got burnt out. And so I think that was the catalyst to wanting to study this. So when I almost left the field, I was either going to get my MBA or get my doctoral degree. And I'm like, should I have gone the other way? Who knows? But here I am. I'm here. But I decided to get my doctoral degree. And so I had an interest in foster care. I studied compassion fatigue and foster parents, actually. So I was looking at it, not so much the therapist lens, but I was attending all these compassion fatigue trainings when I was going through school. And by the way, there's like tumbleweeds running through those trainings when you're at a trauma training because everybody wants like the hot skill training, like, let me learn the new modality, the new thing, and all the self-care and compassion fatigue trainings, like, no one goes to them at all. So I always found that interesting. I'm like, why isn't anybody interested in helping the helper? So it's something that I definitely have been interested in throughout my career. And I've tried to like form peer groups wherever I am. I want to like mentor or supervise people. I always found that really interesting and really fun for me. So ending up in private practice was kind of like, how did I end up here? Because I really want to collaborate and work with other professionals and help them in their roles has been like what I've been motivated to do probably since when did I start my dissertation? Like nearly 20 years ago when I
Mhm.
started my doctoral program. So
So that was Burnout 1.0.
Burnout
And
1.0 for sure. Yeah.
which burnout are you on now?
Yeah, I mean, I thought even at the top of this year I was burnt out again, but I think it's just been a longer episode. Yeah, I think 2.0 was more of a caregiver burnout that I experienced with my son, and so it's not workplace burnout, but my son had heart surgery. I've talked about it many times on the podcast, but I became very hyper vigilant, and I had a traumatic birth with him. I could not regulate my nervous system. I wasn't sleeping. It was really, really, really hard. He's fine, by the way. He's 12, so he's doing great. But at that time, I felt like he wasn't going to live, and I was really worried about him. And so I really struggled as a new mother, and I didn't go back to work for 6 months. So that is important because I feel like I feared because I couldn't go back to work, like my body wouldn't let me because I was dealing with all that at home that when this next bout of burnout happened when I was in my practice in COVID, that I was really scared of, like, not being able to work again, and that comes up for me a lot, that I'm like, "Will I be able to earn money? Like, will I crumble?" And I think that's a story that I told myself from that time, so I would call that, like, 2.0, and, like, 3.0 was probably more my practice, and the peak of that was probably in 21 where I started developing panic attacks driving, just was like, "That's how it's gonna show up. We're just gonna get panic attacks and deal with that." And then, yeah, I mean, I don't think I've had a 4.0. I think I've just been trying to, like, you know, toggle my nervous system and find ways to work now, but I don't necessarily feel burned out. I think I felt waves of depression, which has been I've experienced probably since the birth of my son. And that was actually one of the top episodes of 2025 was, is it depression or burnout? Because there's so much overlap in symptoms that people may not realize they might actually be depressed. So I think more the top of this year, I was experiencing depression and needed to look at more treatment for that as opposed to feeling like it was the work stuff. So long answer to that question.
Yeah, I really appreciate how self-disclosing you are. I think I mean, it's such great modeling because um, I think people that aren't therapists might assume that we've got all of our shit together. and that we've
No.
figured out the secret and we're not suffering anymore.
Mhm.
And right? And that's just not the case. And I think the more that people feel comfortable talking about their own humanity,
Yeah.
the more validating it is for the rest of us. So I just respect so much that you are so forthright about your struggles. It's a gift
No,
to the
thank you.
world. Yeah. Thank you for your gift to the world.
Mhm.
Yeah, and, I have felt before the sort of the projection or the expectation from my own clients that I have everything figured out, and so I really try to disabuse them of that reality that I'm working on the same stuff, and I think most of us that are drawn to this work are wounded healers.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think there's a reason we go into this work. And it was interesting, I think from my background, I had a lot of privilege and I think I remember saying the words like I can handle trauma. Like it doesn't affect me like it affects other people. And now I can see it as like I don't think you'd hear a soldier say something like that. Like I can handle war. I can handle this or a police officer I can handle. It's like there's only so many times that you can walk through fire and not get twinged or not get burned. And I think that myself who was young and new in the field really thought that I could hold it all and I could manage it all. And I don't think any of us can. I think we have a certain resiliency when we're younger, some more than others, maybe due to adverse childhood experiences and things of that nature, of course. But there's probably going to be times in any of our careers as mental health professionals that we're going to need support, we're going to need help. We might need intensive help, might need intensive support. And I think we should normalize that. That
Mhm.
because of the work, we're likely going to need that. And that if it's talked about more, if it's normalized more, that perhaps it won't feel like something's wrong with us for needing that support.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's what I would say to the person definitely listening to this.
Yeah, and you're right, we're not actually meant to hold it alone, right? Our that we're a herd animal, and we're meant to be supported in our groups, and that's one of the really difficult things about being a therapist is the isolation.
Mm,
Yeah, that grief needs to be witnessed, and ethically, we're not supposed to talk except for in very specific environments about what we're going through. And so it's just another level of isolation. And yeah, it takes its toll.
mm, it does. Yeah. And I think that was the impetus for me starting this because I felt utterly alone in closing my practice. I felt like no one really got it. No one really got like the difficulty I was having with closing. I mean, saying goodbye to all those clients was so hard. And I just felt like there was really no support for me, and I think a lot of that was COVID, a lot of that was, like, the unique pressures of the pandemic, and it became more isolating for all therapists and people and humans in general just because we have become more separate since that time, unfortunately. I mean, I think for continue to, like, look in therapist forums, and people are struggling still, I think even more so in this political climate and our difference just appears, I think, especially in the therapy room. And when I closed, I felt this a lot. Our difference appears to be amplified versus reduced. Yeah.
Yeah. I was just thinking about how I think both of us are sort of creating the container or the thing that we both needed for
Hmm.
other people, hopefully. And you mentioned earlier that the podcast is bigger than you. And for me, I used to really cringe at the word spiritual. I had a lot of hangups and resistance to organized religion. And so the word spiritual sort of went with religion when I was younger.
Yeah.
And so I didn't actually come into my own spiritual beliefs until I was much older. And, as you said, you're doing this podcast for something that's bigger than you. And I'm wondering if that word applies here. I have so much curiosity around your religious background. And I believe it was pretty conservative.
Yeah.
And so I have a lot of curiosity around what, where you are now with your spirituality and if I'm connecting the dots correctly when you say that you're doing this for something bigger, does that relate to spirituality in some way?
Yeah, I think anytime we think of something like outside of ourselves that's bigger than us, it goes to a spiritual place, right? I think it touches something that is beyond us, that is perhaps eternal, is something that we see in nature. I think of nature, I think of rhythms a lot, and I come from a conservative background. My training was actually at a Christian integration program where I was trained in Christianity and psychology. So that was in my program. And part of like my burnout in private practice was I was practicing as a Christian psychologist, and I became very disillusioned with almost like I think a pastor leaving the faith or leaving that profession in some ways. Like a lot of my work as a Christian psychologist felt spiritual. It felt not that I was providing spiritual advisement or pastoral care or any of that, but I think I would interweave like spirituality into those sessions often. And many times it was really lovely. It was nice to do that. And I think when the pandemic hit, it became a place where maybe I didn't quite align personally with the way that client believed. And it also was not something I believed at all. Or maybe it was something that was they were talking about hatred or things, and I just could not sit there anymore. And that was part of it. I think that was a huge part
Mm,
of it. And I think my faith has become like very messy, and I still am like figuring that piece out. Like, what do I believe in anymore? And I think a lot of times I hear people who have perhaps left the church, which I haven't left the church completely. I still attend infrequently, and I'm still like not actively trying to figure that piece out of my life yet. And I see a lot of people who have gone from those places of like, yes, either I've left the faith or I'm not practicing as a pastor or as like a Christian psychologist. They kind of reject faith. A lot of things in the evangelical church, which I have been a part of for since birth, I don't align with, I don't agree with. And so that part is hard. I don't really feel that, but I think initially I did. I think from a spiritual perspective for this podcast, I think like wanting to help therapists as a greater whole is something that I'm motivated to do and motivated
mhm,
to continue to do because I see the need is so great. And so if that's spiritual, I think it could be defined as such, right?
mhm, mhm. Yeah, and I think I mentioned in one of our meetups with the group that there are a lot of people I think that are in that messy middle where there was a lot of value that came from being in a religious community,
Yeah.
and sort of as a society we've thrown the baby out with the bathwater.
Hmm.
There's a lot that's really like problematic about religion, and also there's so much about it that is of value, the ritual and the returning to values every week and having a community of people that you see. Like so many of those things are just inherently human, and so
Yeah.
um yeah, I would love to talk with people about that messy middle where you figure out, how do I hold on to the things that serve me and humanity, and how do I let go of those parts that do the opposite.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that's so well stated that I was just thinking as you were saying, like as a society, like we were structured by religion for so long, and that was how community was structured, right? And so if that's not how our communities are structured now, and we're becoming less communal, and we know we need community, and faith was organizing that before, and there are these good elements of faith. How do we do that in ways for communities and for people and for us, for therapists who feel like they can find a community, and maybe it's not related to faith, but maybe it's related to something higher than themselves.
Hmm.
And that's, I think, a bigger societal question just for everyone to answer.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, I know that we have to start wrapping up. I know we could talk for probably a long time.
absolutely. Thinking about community, would it be cool if people let you know that they're out there listening a little bit more often? I
Yeah.
know, yeah, I know that I just started my own podcast, and it's crickets, and that's to be expected because there's only two people listening. But yeah, I when somebody does write me back when I put a newsletter out or something, it just means so much. And so, um, just in regards to community, I was just thinking, wouldn't it be cool if we inspire somebody right now to just let you know that they're listening, and to let them know that it's really a beautiful gift when we're putting our heart out there for somebody to be like, hey, thanks. I heard that. I saw that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's what's kept me going, honestly, is,
Yeah.
it can feel like crickets because no one's listening in the beginning. And then you start to, get these little trickles, right? These little trickles that come, and you'll get little emails and, I get very vulnerable emails and I respond to each one. So if you're not on the pen pal list, it's the therapist pen pal list. I do write back still. So I'm not big enough yet that I'm not able to answer my emails. I hope that this podcast can get to the point of where I can't, and then I have to, like, think of other support layers, like, what else can we offer? Because that means that we're talking more about therapist burnout, and we're talking more about the recovery we need, right? If it gets big enough where I can't even manage my inbox anymore, and not that I necessarily want that, but I just hope that therapists can get that much help is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I think anytime you write, it is really helpful. It helps me know that it's resonating, and I be right into me. I'll ask you, "Do you want me to what do you want to talk about in the podcast?" I'm open to talking about, like, anything you want on the podcast. So I have, like, even talked about issues that people have asked me on emails. I'm like, "Okay, well, do you want me to do a podcast about that?" And they're like, "Yeah, that'd be great." "Sure, do it." So I love those things too. And it does help people who are putting themselves out there to let them know that it's resonating. So comments on, like, or reviews on Apple, like, that's huge. And also, like, just email comments are really cool.
Right. Well, hopefully we've inspired somebody to let you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Check the link in the show notes for the pen pal list if you want to give me a little note. I'd love it. Great. Well, Micah, where can people connect with you?
You can find my website, which is egostrength.net. And what I'm really excited about, though, right now is my podcast that's only got 2 episodes. But it is, as a therapist for 10 years, one of the things that I've come up against is that there is a lot of information that I want to convey to my clients that I don't have time to in 50 minutes. And so this podcast is my answer to that. A lot of the foundational information that nobody ever taught us that is just so helpful for understanding why it's hard to human, the context.
Yeah.
So I would be so excited if anybody wanted to take a listen.
Thank you so much for talking to me, interviewing me on the podcast. It was great. And I know I'll have you back on. If you have a burnout story you want to share, we'll have you
Oh, yeah.
share it. Okay. Great.
Yeah, and I just want to thank you, Jen, because you have been, I just admire you so much, and you've been such a role model for me while I start my own journey in the direction that you're going. And so thank you for being so supportive and kind to me and sharing your wisdom.
Of course. It's been my pleasure.
Take
All
care.
right. Well, take care. Bye, everyone.